and welcome to the Global View, the show where we look at ways for investors to make money beyond the ASX-listed universe. I'm your host, Juliet Sali. Well, US stocks closed sharply lower during Wednesday's trade after Nvidia warned of major charges from new restrictions on chip exports to China, and Fed Chair Jay Powell signalled slowing economic growth. The Dow was down by 1.75%. The S&P 500 fell more than 2%, and the Nasdaq sank by 3%. Wall Street's fear gauge, the CBOE Volatility Index, spiked by more than 8%. Now, Nvidia says it expects $5.5 billion in charges after the US limited exports of its H20A1 chip to China, a major market. Nvidia shares were down almost 7%, and the broader semiconductor index fell by more than 4%. AMD also slumped, while Dutch chip equipment maker ASML added to the gloom, warning that tariffs had clouded its outlook. United Airlines maintained its profit outlook for 2025, but unusually laid out two scenarios for the year, saying that the macro environment was, quote, impossible to predict this year with any degree of confidence. US Fed Chair Jerome Powell says the central bank will wait for more economic data before adjusting interest rate policy. Speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago, Powell said that the economy and labour market remain solid, while a rush of imports to beat tariffs may slow first quarter GDP. But Powell also warned tariffs could drive up prices while slowing growth and weakening the labour market, pushing inflation and employment further from the Fed's goals. Despite the challenges, Powell said markets were functioning well and that recent volatility reflects investors adapting to the shifting policy environment. Meanwhile, the World Trade Organization has sharply cut its 2025 trade growth forecast and warned of a deeper slump due to the US tariffs and spillover effects. The WTO citing they could lead to the heaviest slump since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The WTO says it expects trading goods to fall by 0.21% this year, down from its expectation in October of a 3% expansion. US retail sales saw their biggest jump in over 2 years in March as households rushed to buy cars and other goods ahead of expected tariff-driven price hikes, likely just enough to keep the economy above water in the first quarter. Retail sales were up 1.4% in March, the largest gain since January 2023. Manufacturing output rose by 0.3% in March after rebounding 1% in February and grew at a 5.1% rate in the first quarter. Meanwhile, the Bank of Canada held its policy rate steady at 2.75%, citing the need for more time to evaluate the impact of tariffs. The yield on the US 10-year declined 5 basis points to 4.28%. The US dollar slid to its lowest level since April 2022. The Aussie dollar 63.8 US cents this morning. And Bitcoin rose. It is tracking above 84,000 US dollars a coin. Gold prices surged past 3,300 US dollars an ounce for the first time to hit fresh records as investors turn to safe havens amid escalating US-China trade tensions. Gold has posted 25 all-time highs this year, of which 13 are above the $3,000 level. Oil prices were up nearly 2% to a 2-week high on concerns about global supplies after Washington issued new sanctions targeting Chinese importers of Iranian oil. Brent settled at $65.85. West Texas Intermediate was higher by almost 2% at $62.47. Let's get more on the global market action. Ira Epstein from Lynn and Associates joining me now. Ira, great to see you. I mean, I guess what we saw with the Nvidia fallout really just shows how much the tariffs are starting to bite.
Right. Well, what was surprising wasn't the surprise. That was it. You know, it was just, remember, Trump is in office since January 20th. It seems so far ago, but we're dealing with really January to February, March, April, 90 days, 100 days. And NVIDIA was given the okay by this administration to make that H20 chip. You would have thought it would have gone through, but now it's not only not going to go through, but today there was some insight into how long these licenses could take, and that could be a year and a half by design of the government. So if it took a year and a half, you know, just how new are those at that point? What I don't understand is why can't these be sold elsewhere? At the price they're going to cost at fire sale prices, even though they're not the Blackwell chip, they're going to be powerful. So the question is, are they really worthless? I don't know that. AMD taking the hit, other companies taking it. And again, every day you wake up, there's something new from the Trump administration, which makes it impossible. And it's the reason the Bank of Canada didn't move on its rate. It's the reason that we are paralyzed. And today, when you heard Fed Chair Powell speak, if you were watching that, I did not get the impression they're in any hurry to help this economy. They admit they're caught between still a labor market that's relatively strong and inflation numbers that are going up. Ford Motor Company today said that if everything stays as is on these tariffs, just as they are, they're going to have to raise prices in May in America. That's not the best things you want to hear.
Absolutely not. And it was interesting to see the effect of the retail sales too. It seems people are trying to front load and get ahead of the tariffs coming in.
Well, they did, but remember, these are backward-looking numbers. They're not forward-looking. So that's exactly what they did. We saw that on the ports. We saw it in the Chinese numbers, as their numbers of exports went up rather dramatically. So all that has taken place. It's not going to take place currently because at 145% tariff, nobody's buying from China. Boeing, we didn't mention that. What about pulling the plug? So what China did is they took out their 6 guns, they aimed them at their own feet, and they shot them both because, as I see it, they don't manufacture planes that can compete with a Boeing. They have a lot of Boeing planes. Their fleet's about 10 years old on average. Where are they going to get new parts? They can salvage old parts. Do you want to fly on that plane? I don't.
No, absolutely not. So how difficult is it then to be not only in corporate America, I guess anywhere as a CEO globally now, Ira?
You know, United said it, and the United Airlines in America did something that most weren't looking for, including me, by the way. They gave you 2 scenarios. One, if things stay as they are. The other, if we get a recession. Because a recession is the word being thrown around in America often. I happen to think we're in one of sorts already. I just see slowdowns everywhere that you're turning around. They're talking here restaurants, how they're getting hurt already. And this is our season where people come to the big city like Chicago. They love it, but tourism is going to be down. America right now under Trump has put itself into a position. We're not the most favored country. We're not the best ally. We're going through a transition that this man thinks is good. He's got 150 lawsuits against him. I think what he's doing is right in the end. It's how he's doing that is creating the problem. And nobody can judge anything in business that way. How can you make a decision today when you don't know what you're going to have tomorrow? Can't be done.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that is benefiting from this is gold continuing to hit these records, 25 record highs already in 2025, Ira.
Well, think about it. What currency do you want to own? There aren't many. You don't know what the tariff news is going to do to them, so that stops that. Bitcoin broke away and said, not me, but it said, Bitcoin, it's not a safe haven. What it is another asset class. It seems to tie itself more or less to what the stock market, specifically the NASDAQ, does more than anything. So that leaves you with one valuable that goes on there, not diamonds, because there's too many synthetic diamonds. That's hurt that business. So now what we've got is the gold market left. And the gold has just proven itself. Now, how high is high? A crowded trade without question. Is the market setting up that when it does correct, it's going to be one hellacious correction? Absolutely. I've traded this now for my whole career. And I can tell you when it comes, the first $100 you won't see coming. It'll just happen. So you got to be careful of what you do. Strategies, if you use it, you might want to have something covered calls, covered positions in different ways. But it's still the market that when you have no answer, people are running to.
So what does it mean then more broadly for the bond market, Ira, particularly when you had a large auction of 20-year notes during the session?
Well, that didn't go too bad. It's the fact that the market's repricing under Trump. What is the value of our longer term instruments? The shorter term falls under the purview of the Federal Reserve. They can go in and they can manipulate that and tweak. The marketplace, the real market, determines what's going to be for the 20 to 30-year bonds. And when we saw 5%, it literally shook the world. I mean, it was an unusual event. People thought that it was selling by China and Japan. Well, I just saw the figures that in February, at least, both China and Japan were net buyers of U.S. Treasuries, not sellers. I don't know what they've done in March. We don't have those numbers yet. But why would they, again, sell and hurt themselves? Japan is coming in, and they are in the United States negotiating with President Trump's team now for whatever their tariffs are going to be. And what we have to have is a deal. We need the first deal to be made so we know what the parameters of deals look like. I don't care if it's with a big country or a medium-sized country. We need a deal so we understand what the Trump administration is looking for and how they're going to think they get to where this works. Tariffs are fine, not crippling tariffs like these. I don't agree with what we're doing.
Yeah, indeed. All right, unfortunately, going to have to leave it there. Have a fabulous long weekend, and we'll catch you again soon. Ara Epstein from Lynn and Associates joining us there after another volatile global session. Just before we go, we are expecting to open lower, no surprise, given the weakness that we saw coming through from US markets. SPI futures down 1/3%. The key focus, of course, is going to be the March jobs data, 45,000 jobs expected. We've also got BHP, PLS among the companies releasing quarterly earnings. All of that coming up in the open, and that does it for this edition of The Global View.